we're giving to human is uh, is in the matrix with the wool pulled over them, and it's
Yeah,
not in our divine creator's word.
right. Yes, it's just the autonomous programs that are running those bodies.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
we've I've got I can't it's better not say we I've got a software in me right now that I gotta delete
Yeah.
and go out there, but be able to like I'm going out to get a job in Babylon so I can get myself out of Babylon
Yeah. Yeah.
because I can't do it in well, I wouldn't call it the freedom community, but in divine time. But that's how. But it is going divine because the money there's nothing real.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
No, that's good. Thank you.
So anyway, I think I booked up an appointment with you. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
saw
I
it
was
for tomorrow. Tomorrow in the evening.
okay. Yeah, I want to do some. Well, yeah, we'll talk about it later.
All right, let's go. It's Metal Mondays, so we'll start the charts off with metal. Audrey Lynn, no, we cannot hear. Just saw your comment now. Cannot hear you at this time. Keep trying. I will let you know if we hear you. Metal. Start with silver. We've been crawling up this trend line now this whole time, basically. We hit that all-time high, $122. Is that right? 121.64, just shy of 122. Coming back down, we saw that we found that long-term trend line, pressed hard up against it on March 23rd, and ever since then, bouncing. Zooming in on that chart, we can see just how much that bounce has been occurring. Now, there's a school of thought that's saying that with the sudden uncertainty within the markets, sudden in the sense that people are very, very reactive, that Trump is, his antics over in Iran are resulting in more insecurity, and that there will actually be another drop in gold and silver in precious metals. Now, if that were the case, it would be within the best interests of those that be in the those that have the power to bring themselves back to this 50 54 US line on silver, simply because that's where that next pivot point really is. There's a little one at 58 that we might see some support, but that it's likely to fall back down to 54. And again, it's a school of thought. I'm not of it, and that might be to my own detriment. The shortages, it's about whether or not they can maintain the illusions ahead of the shortages. With shortages in metal right now, and progressively since last year, the shortages demand a higher price. If they drop, it's going to be because they're just dropping more futures. And that's what occurred with oil as well this last week. We'll talk about that in a second. Gold prices finding that old resistance back on March 22nd, finding that that old support. It's been rising steadily, creating higher lows and higher highs. We are at a critical point here. I would want to see this get back up above into this range here, and especially over top of the white line at 50,000, 5,500. Sorry, 5,050. But it would need to get up above that and find support. There's going to be some resistance. If again, if the people who think it's going down are correct, now would be the time for it to go down. It's not much more. There's a little bit. There's another pivot point at the white line, but we'll see how things pan out this week. Gold silver ratio still hanging out, consolidating ever more, even after getting out from getting out from above. You know that condensation. It's condensing here. It's consolidating. It's getting tighter. That rising wedge pattern got broken out last week. April 8th did another test, but since then having a difficult time maintaining that. So we'll see more consolidation of that as time goes on. I'm going to get rid of that long-term trend line because it's kind of irrelevant now. Now we're watching this consolidation zone here.
Okay, on what should I say? There's so many things that manipulate things and whatnot, but what length of span is an average on the consolidation lines?
Yeah, typically speaking, if we looked out throughout history, consolidation can last about a month. That's something that can occur a lot of times, especially within currencies. We see trends take 3 to 4 months, and then consolidation about 25% of the time. Now, when it comes to metals, typically, again, like if we go to the gold prices and we go prior to COVID, let's go see here. This is on a 2 hour chart, so we're not going to see it. There we go. Prior to COVID, if there was consolidation, let's just look at this area here. That was 151 days where it didn't really have a lot of decision. Here's another consolidation. This occurred across 131 days. So, some of this can go for months. We are in a very volatile time right now. So the consolidation that we see today, that's going to be occurring in shorter bursts. This one here is the gold silver ratio. So the consolidation really doesn't give us too much of an indication on the direction of things. This one here, we're really just watching it so that we get an idea of when to exit silver and go into gold, where you're selling your silver for gold. That way you can get gold for super, super cheap. A lot of people, especially those who were following me in the early parts of my work, 2017, 18, 19, people were buying silver for $15 to $20 an ounce, US, granted. But at $15 to $20 an ounce, when it only costs you 20 ounces of silver to get an ounce of gold, now you're getting an ounce of gold for about $400. That's we're talking that's 80s prices. So that's why we're following this right now. The consolidation. You're right to ask. How long does consolidation usually last? Within the ratio of gold and silver, it's going to be a lot shorter. We're not going to see months of consolidation like 120 days or that kind of thing. Going over to the US markets here, we had that rise up coming up from last week, finding some resistance right now. We're going to update the silver prices here, gold and silver prices on this market. Let's expand this a little bit more so I can see the numbers. Taking 47,961. Going to divide that by gold, which sits at 47,966. Oops. $47 no. 47.41. That's wrong. 47.961. No, it's already 970 right now. Gonna divide that by gold. 47.42. We went up just a little bit. Half an ounce. And then for silver, for 47.970, divide the price of silver, 75.50. And we're at 635. That might be all the weakness that we get out of metals as well. You know, again, it's a school of thought that says that metals will go down because of the faith in the dollar going up. Propaganda is going to be the winner at this point. Now, oil prices. Last week we discussed this drop Tuesday, going into Wednesday's trading day. How that dropped so suddenly? Well, it was a well-known fact that in that drop, Baron Trump bought a bunch of oil. So he got oil at 17% off, mysteriously too. Like he just knew that that's how it was going to go down. So the fact that he's buying oil at a discount tells me that he's pretty certain it's going up. Well, how would he know that? Probably because he knows what his dad's going to say next week or the week after. Negotiations have not been going well, according to the propaganda. Of course, it was funny to hear Vance, the vice president, say that, oh yeah, the negotiations ended up not being good for Iran. So they're saying that it's good for the US, which again is, I think, one of the reasons why there is the school of thought saying that the US dollar is going to be gaining dominance. As it gains dominance, of course, we'll see other currencies weaken, especially if they are from markets that do not capitalize on oil. But I want to talk, this is where I wanted to go today, because gold, silver, and oil, there's a correlation in how these move. You can't see it on the charts. It's more so in the macroeconomic trends. Gold and silver are absolutely necessary for data centers. They make up a large, there's a large demand for gold and silver in the making of electronics, either because of its conductivity, malleability, its ability for even storing data. Oil is incredibly utilitarian as well. And in one of the main uses in computing is in chip manufacturing. A lot of oil gets used in chip manufacturing. We know that there is not a shortage of oil. We've learnt this from years past as we study the truth and how, this idea of fossil fuels was it was all initiated by the Rockefellers. Or sorry, I might have pronounced that incorrectly, Rockefeller, but of course I call them Rockefeller for another reason. The narrative is that these are fossil fuels, that oil is a fossil fuel, when it's not the truth. It's a very abundant resource. In fact, it's regenerative. The earth itself produces more of it the more that we burn it. I know that sounds weird, but the fact of the matter is, earth takes carbon dioxide and absorbs it. And it takes carbon monoxide and absorbs it. The off gas of burning oil, earth absorbs it and it utilizes that as the nutrients necessary to continue making the lubrication. That's what oil is. Oil is Mother Earth's lubrication for the crust. Without it, we would have way too many earthquakes. It allows for the sliding of that crust. Think of it as an orange peel that's not attached to the orange. That's what oil does. Oil makes it where that orange can move around without the earth being disrupted. It's a wonderful system, circular even. So oil prices going up, we know, is a fabrication of lack mentality. It's basically injecting the idea of limitation of limited resources into the markets. But here's where it's important. If the oil prices are going up, then all electronics are going to become expensive. But I believe that it will be used, that this whole operation will be used to create a scarcity of chips, or create the illusion that there is a scarcity of chips. Simply because you need oil to manufacture chips. And I have a sneaky suspicion that one of the reasons why they're doing that is because they need the computer chips to become prohibitively expensive so that people don't end up creating their own networks. So that people don't end up taking self-governance over their data. That it will be a higher bar for people to reach. Make it a little bit more difficult. Make it easier for people to rent their machines. Remember, you're not going to own anything? Trump's right in on that. He doesn't want people to own things. If he did, he wouldn't be going after someone else's oil. So we can tell by their value system, we get an idea of what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And when we take a look at how oil prices jumping up like this, that was a fabrication. Oil prices dropping back down again, that's a fabrication. You know, we saw that how it was that people are just buying and selling oil 5 minutes before these fluctuations in off-market times. That's the other thing. That I'm quite convinced that we're going into a cyber war, and that it's going to cause people to pass up governance of their data to greater degrees than they ever did before. Like the internet already was as an opportunity for people to create more self-governance with their data. The internet did that. And then people passed up that responsibility to internet service providers instead of creating their own networks, their own nodes, as they're called. Well, AI is the new internet. It's the next evolution of what the internet did, and it's going to become just a way of life for people. And that way of life, if we're not taking that self-responsibility over the data being created, and we are renting the machines that are creating the data, then we will not have governance over how the data is created. And to incentivize people to own less of their data, incentivize people to have another entity create the data for them, they're going to have to make it expensive to do it on your own. That's why things that are private are more expensive. Why? Because you're taking full governance over it. You're not renting it. That's what I'm seeing occur. I'm not looking at this from a perspective that most people do, and I recognize that. You know, people who are doing market analysis out there, a lot of people are out there doing market analysis, but they are just looking at the numbers. Oh, it's up and down. Oh, look at the oil is up because there's scarcity. We don't know what's going on. Strait of Hormuz is creating a shortage. No, no, none of it is real. But they are accurate on their numbers, and they're probably accurate with what the news result, what the result of the news is. It's called fundamentals. I never really went down that path. I never learnt fundamental training or trading, which is following the news to determine the trend. I follow the math to determine the trend. The math tells me more truth about what's going on than what the news tells us. But there are people, that's all they do. They study the news and then they put their money in the direction that they think it's going to go based off of the news. It's called fundamental trading. Technical analysis takes away the headlines, takes away the news. It recognizes that it has an effect, and even a powerful effect, but recognizes also it's just propaganda, and that the math is the final dictator of telling us where's the market going. The market is always right. It's never wrong. And the math simply gives us the indication of what the market is communicating. But when you are looking at it from a technical analysis perspective, you automatically, at some point or another, will start to gravitate towards the story arc of what these trends tell us. That's why when I got into when I really started to see and have the epiphany of what the digital ID was, I was like, people are going to be completely blindsided by this because, like, look at how even, early 2000s, people were using debit cards to make payments for things, like commonly, just using debit cards. It was swipe. It wasn't tap yet, but you had to swipe it, right? Just like your old credit cards. And I remember processing those credit cards with the slider. It was taking the imprint with the carbon copy, and then you'd go and autograph that. That seemed to mean something to people, right? But then when things became just swiping of the card and putting in numbers, the connection to people's equity started to drop. It was weakened because you didn't see it occur. It was more ethereal. It was more even ambiguous. That trend has a profound impact on the direction of humanity because the digital world is invisible. You see the result of the digital world, but you don't actually see what goes on, what occurs. And so that trend will result in the need for the controllers to give chips to make a shortage on computer chips. Because if there is no shortage on the computer chips, I can tell you right now that it would be very cheap for people to create their own networks, regain governance over their means of communications. And we know, like, we can look back throughout history. Audrey Lynn, I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this because I can tell that there's something burning on your mind, but we got to make sure that that's working. Nothing, eh? Yeah, we still can't hear. We're gonna have to get that sorted out. I might recommend that you can get like a standalone webcam and just have that be the microphone and the camera connected by USB. Because oh no, you're directly on your phone watching. Yeah, that's still weird then. That's even weirder. Where was I going with that? Alberta, back in the day, we had our own telephone company. People owned the telephone infrastructure. And that communications network belonged to the people. It was owned by them. And uh, the politician responsible for the loss of that wonderful cheap asset, by the way. If we would have kept our governance over that, oh, nope, still nothing. Bummer. If the people would have kept their governance over their telecommunications infrastructure, today our phone bills would be about $10 a month. But we didn't do that. Why? Because the people elected a psychopath that wanted to rob the people of their infrastructure and sell it to foreign corporations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was none other than Ralph Klein, the guy that everybody thinks was such a great premier because he got Alberta out of debt and all that good stuff. Yeah, so lots of truths behind what happened there. And one of the things he did was sold the people's asset. Since then, I don't know if you've noticed, but Alberta, within Canada, Alberta has the highest communications charges. Canada has the highest in the world, and Alberta is the highest in Canada. If only the people would stop voting, we might get somewhere. So, what does this mean? What does this all mean? Where am I going with this? That sounds almost, it is a very pessimistic view on the direction of humanity right now, but I want to share with you the hope. Okay? Electronics, I'm going to bring this up. I haven't seen this for a while. Electronics, there's a technology that we're familiar with. In fact, I'm just going to quickly do this for a second. We're familiar with the idea of graphene. And I even think that graphene has had a negative connotation brought forward with it in the past few years. But graphene was something that I had learned about in 2013. And graphene is it is graphite at the nano level. That's what graphene is. Graphene is just graphite that they were able to bring down to one molecule thick, almost like a two-dimensional sheet of graphite. Well, graphene was theorized in the 60s, 1960s. And in that theory, it was if we were able to get this graphite down to that nano level, that we would be able to enhance our conductivity of electronics. We would be able to, it would have properties, new properties that we haven't explored in other metals. And of course, graphite is extremely, extremely malleable. We use it in pencils because of how malleable it is. It leaves a trace very easily. Think of, using cave artists, they would use coals to make drawings on the cave walls. Well, eventually we found out about graphite and how that would leave marks as we rubbed it against the walls. Well, the graphene ended up becoming, there was a test conducted in 2011. And in 2011, they took a square, 1 inch by 1 inch square of graphene, and they connected a wire to one side and they connected another wire to the other. They put a battery on one side of that graphene and they put a light bulb on the other side. And that light bulb lit up. So they confirmed, yes, it's conductive. But here's the thing, they measured it out. It's 200 times more conductive than traditional electronics. 200 times more conductive, which means there's less resistance, which means it doesn't take as much energy to run those electronics. Well, after they did that, they disconnected the battery and the light stayed on. So not only is it conductive, it's also a capacitor. It's also able to hold energy like a battery. But then they unlocked even more discovery when they found out that capacitor, its capacity to be a capacitor, also translated into its ability to store data. And that if and that the miracle is that if you've got these phones that have batteries in them right now. If the battery was made out of graphene, you could charge it wirelessly for about 5 seconds and it would stay charged for a week with heavy use. It's just so efficient at being able to store energy. The other thing is that on the data side of things, you could you could have the hard drive that's inside these phones that stores all that data. If that was turned into graphene, you would have 600 times more storage capacity. You know, this phone here has got the capacity for 128 gigabytes. 600 times that? Well, that's, a thousand, so 128 gigs times 1,000, that's 128 terabytes. So you're looking at 12 terabytes on your phone if the hard drive was made of graphene. Graphene also, what else is there? I think I covered everything. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. From the BBC in 2014, by the way, this was written in 2014. Hemp fibers better than graphene. We can grow computer chips out of the ground. Just let the weight of that rest with you for a moment. Take hemp fibers and you burn them down to a carbon and you make nanotechnology out of it and you've got supercapacitors with which you can make computer chips. What are we doing as humanity? We're ignoring the fact that we have the capacity to self-govern everything. So I just wanted to throw that in there because, again, I think I've been saying this for a long time, and I know sometimes I can become very repetitive in what I'm saying, but there's a reason why I do repeat some of these things. Like, for instance, the cyber war, the big threat is going to be AI. And it's just going to make sense to everybody that computer chips are going to become very expensive. But none of it has to occur. And my drive behind sharing with people my version and unique perspective of the markets is to help people see that there's an alternative. There are other ways of doing this, that we can actually create a very thriving, flourishing civilization when we discontinue our support for the powers that be, the powers that would continue to disillusion us as to what reality is. I quickly look at the tech stocks that are current. We just have Amazon make another huge jump here in the last little while. We can see that from Wednesday there was that big jump, that it jumped up another 8%. So in the last 14 days, the last 2 weeks, up 20%. That's a pretty good spike. That's a pretty good jump. Oracle. Oh, look at that. This morning, Oracle, over the weekend, Oracle was given a bad rap by a lot of people, especially on the social medias, saying that Oracle, the data center company, this is the company that builds data centers. Oracle fired 30,000 employees last week. So those reports came in, and look at that. Their stock is up 10% in the first opening hours of the market. Google also jumped up there on the Wednesday and has been holding that pattern ever since. Palantir actually dropped and currently has a new low to be mindful of. There might be some, typically speaking, stocks are very much more susceptible to news. And so people may have a lessened perspective on what Palantir is doing right now simply because of its mass surveillance motivations. NVIDIA, we're still seeing this, this high range. This is the highest it's ever been. And that range seems to be providing a lot of resistance right now. And this previous low, that's a sign of things to come. They could very well, like, if this does not go well,
if this does not go well.
Now I hear myself in Audrey Lynn's. So now Audrey Lynn's microphone is working. But that's very loud.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can definitely hear you. But now it's feeding back. My voice is coming through the speaker back through your microphone.
Oh, how lovely is that not?
Yeah, it's a eternal struggle.
Yeah.
Japanese markets also having risen over the past week, 6%. That might be just because the currency has been able to hold itself from another high, another devaluation. Going into crypto markets here, we got a little bit of a jump on Bitcoin dominance starting this week off. Prices also rising here since the opening of the markets. This is quite a shelf, though. There's a lot of support in this zone here. The fact that we got up above this pivot point, I should probably make adjustments. The pivot points have kind of shifted a little bit from some of what was used to be a more of a micro pivot point, now becoming a little bit more prominent. Yeah. Pretty crucial point. If it's able to maintain that, we'll probably break out above, but we still have this long-term trend line to challenge. Total market capitalization of the altcoins still hanging out. We've been consolidating ever since February. Within this range here. It's not dropping. And the fact that Bitcoin dominance has gone up, but this is not dropping, is another indication that we're still maintaining. When the money's coming in, it's going straight into Bitcoin. It's not leaving the altcoins. Sign of the times. If there was more dominance being brought in and it was being diverted from altcoins, this would be going down. But that means that the new money coming in is going into Bitcoin right now. Ethereum continuing to show its signs of life. Again, we got to make sure, following the green line, that would be the indication that we're actually trending. Midnight at some all-time lows since their very beginning. I actually expect midnight to go to $1 by the end of this cycle. So when things take off and altcoins are in season, I expect it to be $1. And the reason why is simply because of its position in privacy. More and more financial institutions are considering it. That would result in a 250x increase. No, sorry, 25x. It's 2,500. ADA sitting down at the 23-cent mark, 24-cent mark on US, and it's gone below the previous low after creating a high. You know, these fluctuations, they occur back and forth all the time. This is a clear indication of exchanges just moving the price back and forth between pivot points for their own benefit. People take advantage of these as well many times, but you got to be watching the charts like a hawk. This is the 4-hour chart, so you have to be on top of things. Because when you see that fluctuation, it's time to change positions. And that's about it. That's all I was going to bring up for market analysis today. Other assets, XRP, I'm thinking this is going to be going by the wayside simply because Swift has confirmed that they are creating their own chain for interbranch transfers, making XRP pretty much obsolete. BitTensor finding its new support. Any questions? I'm just looking to see if there's any significant movement in other markets here. Nothing else really to report. Just going to get a preview here. We talked about this back before. I'll see if just Dario's got anything new. Nothing yet. Any questions? Nothing. Well, thank you so much for joining us for market analysis on Monday, April 13th already. Almost halfway through the month. Then where did that go? Where did the first half of the month go? On your phone with Coho, pretty much. That's where most of that month went.
And I still get to speak with him tomorrow as to why the terms and conditions are in French and not English.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah.
You want me to grant consent in a language that's not even my own.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow for market analysis.
Okay, see you. Thanks.